collection, and following up on the Fisher theme, I brought two Fisher units. Well, these are three model units. Two of these are, this one's early 50s, and this one's a little bit later. You can see how Fisher, this is a preamp and tuner unit, and they made just a tuner unit that looked just like this with less knobs in the early 50s, and then they streamlined and flattened the chassis out, and this is pretty much the same thing from the later 50s in the model unit. And I got these both off of eBay probably 10 years ago or so, and you could buy these things for 50 bucks, 60 bucks. And I've looked at the prices lately, and for some reason people are excited about mono stuff again. This probably goes for $250 on eBay now, and this might go for the same or $200. And one of the competition against Fisher was Craftsman, and they made a pretty nice unit where Fisher uses the aluminum chassis. Craftsman wanted to be a little fancy and used a chrome chassis, and I think it's pretty neat. But I don't think, to be honest with you, the quality of this is quite the same as the Fisher. This thing was full of bumblebee capacitors, and they're out of there now because I was afraid that thing was going to blow up. But these are just a couple items out of my collection that I don't know. I may put them back on eBay now that they're worth some money. and I brought this because I know Kurt was going to bring a turntable, and this I resurrected parts. We found this under Ted's workbench. Ted Bryant, whose gear is out here, when Robert was heading up the cleaning crew, and I helped with the cataloging all this stuff and putting it in boxes. And this was under his workbench, and it was really filthy, and the wires were hanging off it. And we figured we were going to scrap it, and I said, no, let me see if I could work on it. And I brought it home, cleaned it up, hooked all the wires back up, and golly, the thing works. The motor works. And I got the correct arm off of eBay, and I cried at how much I had to pay for it until I kept watching these things, and I felt, oh, maybe I didn't do so bad for 150 bucks. I was able to put the whole thing together, and I made this bass, and this is just one of the favorite turntables that the radio stations used, and a lot of hi-fi guys back in the day like this. It's all cast aluminum, and it's very smooth. As long as the idler wheel doesn't have any bumps on it, it's great. So I just figured I'd bring it out and show you. Probably you guys are familiar with this. I mean, there were a number of different turntables, Thorns and gosh, out of Garrard and a whole bunch of them. But these were made in America. These were made in New York, and very, very popular in the late 40s and through the early 60s. So that's a few items I brought for you guys to take a look at.
Anybody got any questions for us? We've gone pretty quick, so I may talk about something else here today. Go ahead.
How does the Magnavox equipment from that era compare to this stuff?
The Magnavox stuff compares very favorably to the Shimano Fisher gear that you see here in front of you. Their stuff kind of started to go downhill when the stereo stuff came out, and it just wasn't quite the same. But the early 50s stuff and the late 40s Magnavox stuff that has the modern FM band is high quality, very high quality stuff. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of this stuff. If you were fortunate enough back in the early 60s to bought you a pair of Marantz Model 9 stereo amps for roughly $750, today you would see $4,000 to $8,000 for a pair of those amps. If you bought the right Macintosh stuff, which there's some of that in that catalog, all of that's gone up in price, and the market is dramatic for some of that stuff. Some of that stuff is so valuable, it's like some of our radio collectors here. Should it be restored or should it stay original? In the Marantz high-end market, the stuff that's untouched is worth more than the stuff restored. That's really, and that means it's not safe to play. But that's the way that market is for the high-end stuff.
And then, Looking over here, it has a stereo capability for FM is one channel and AM is the other channel?
Oh, no, I didn't bring anything like that. Yeah, well, they were doing that. Yeah, I have some Scott tuners at home. They tune AM on one channel and FM on the other, so you can get the early simulcast stuff.
That's right.
Now, these are true, the units I have are true stereo units.
So how long did that simulcast stuff last?
He started, I guess, in the late 50s and went on to the approved stereo. I think that was 62 or 63.
It was about 3 years or so that they came out with those hybrid systems.
I saw a question over here. Yes, sir.
How does the Dynakit preamps and amps fit into that?
Well, I can talk about that too. If somebody can show this, there's a few things on this. This is just still pictures. And you can see some Dynaco stuff in there. This right in there. We can get with the Dynaco stuff. Dynaco was always known for their transformers. And their transformers are very high quality stuff. If they bring this up, we'll probably skip a screen here, and you can see some Dynaco stuff. I don't have a Fisher 400 preamp. That's in my collection. It's totally restored. You keep skipping past that one. But I'm not much on doing this kind of stuff. I decided to try this right before I left the house.
Next.
Yeah, go to the next one. Dynaco Mark III, they called the Paoli modifications out of a company in Pennsylvania. They added those monstrous extra capacitors to the circuit, and you'll notice on the little circuit board, instead of there being a single tube, which was a 6A-N8 in the original Dynacos, there's now a pair of tubes. That's a later modification, but that circuit board came from Triode Company out of Chicago. I picked these up out of an estate. If I had an internal picture of this gentleman has capacitors that are valued at $100 a piece inside this unit. And it plays great. In the picture, I've got some very valuable Tungsol Type 1 6550s. Go ahead and skip to another picture there. I think it's going to show some more of them. Yeah, that's another picture of the same thing, showing the giant capacitors. Okay, now stop on this one. Here's something that people did later. Now this is from the estate, as the Dynacos were, of the late Harry Gates of Goldsboro, North Carolina. Basically, Harry took a Audio Research dual 75 amplifier, ripped the chassis off of it, stole the transformers and the circuit board, and modified it to what you see here. This would use a pair of 6550s behind the tubes in the front and a single 6550 for voltage regulation. I think there's another picture of the inside of this one. Now, this isn't really vintage. Okay, underneath, you see the circuit board. Go back one. Yeah, you see the circuit board does say on it, although you can't see it, Audio Research. And then he added these items. These are Swedish input transformers at a value of about $500 a set. These gold capacitors are $100 a piece. He, I'm sure, bought them at a ham fest. I know he knew that kind of price on it. You switch to the next one. And on the floor in front of the modified Mark IIIs, you see a pair of Dynaco Mark IIIs, stock, totally restored with better capacitors, still using a 5AR4, and they do test out at 50 watts a channel. They did 50 watts per amp. Now there in the middle was something I wish I owned. That is a buddy of mine's Marantz Model 8 power amp that I was burning in a set of tubes for it, the amp in the middle, and that went to the auction house where I work at. Totally restored, worked perfectly. That brought $2,100. That is a 30 watt per channel amp.
Why didn't you buy it?
Because I did not have $2,100, and the guy that bought it would have kept going. Would have kept going. I'd have the money anyway. Thank you. John, switch to the next one. There's a close-up of it. The cool thing about the Marantz that nobody else had back in the day, there's individual bias adjustments per tube. So you didn't have to have a match pair or a match quad. What I had was a set of Japanese Mullard copies, all with the same construction that I biased individually per channel. That's why those little black caps on top. See those? Those little covers cover the bias adjustments on the amp. It's also missing the cage. And it's not even in mint condition. You can see the little scratches and roughness on it. So imagine what a mint one's worth. Next, there is a next one. I can't remember what's on there. Yeah, that's that one again.
I think we're back to
I think we're done. Anyway, is there any more questions? I didn't want to take anybody else's time here. It's 1:26, so we've gone really fast.
Everybody hear that? That's what you were expected to be able to copy through 500 kc if you're over a ship or land station. Everybody on the same frequency, slightly different tones, different levels of signal, some louder, some softer, and the good operators could pick it all out.
Complete with chirps and key clicks.
That was a day of Iron Men and wooden ships over to radio. My name is John Dilks. Up until last month, I wrote the vintage radio column in QST. I have my last column on my webpage at k2tqn.com if you want to read the last column. I decided to retire. It was a long time, and they treated me fairly well for most of the time there, and it was a wonderful opportunity. Now I'm going to ask a favor. I've been loaned a couple of these sound files from a friend on the condition that they not be put out on the internet or distributed. So I'm going to ask everybody here on your honor, please do not record my session. I think it will become available.
And for example, they had no ADCOC high frequency direction finding capability. War progressed in Europe, things started happening over here. 500 of the best hams and commercial operators across the country were these. Radio operator, $1,800 a year. It's not too bad. How much is that a month? $1,500 a month?
150.
No. December 7th happens. What happens on December 8th? And monitor basically all radio communications. Okay, organization during World War II. They were chartered with 7x24 monitoring of all of our coast. Actually 20 SX-28s. So if you love SX-28s, you'll love the RID, okay? And for VHF, they use S-27s. And you can see the different speakers and all that. Again, they sit there and tune through the spectrum, okay? And their job to identify all signals, document, share with other people. Sometimes they would engage in DC, of course, was the center to all this, but they had primary stations, approximately 4. It's not a complete list, but I started trying to come up with a full list, but William Culpepper says, oh, there's Powder Springs, Georgia, which is a big, still a direction finding station, and there was another one in there, Allegan, Michigan, and there's some slides in there from that place too. Center, and here's a group of RID agents getting ready to go to South America to work with those governments down there to shut down the transmitters, and that's basically what they did. Specialized gear. Well, they had paper disc recorders, and they would record broadcast, propaganda broadcasts mostly. There was even the Foreign Broadcast Intelligence Service. They're recording on the paper disc, and so that's what that group of the RID did. Of course, it was good to be an RID agent here. This was your typical antenna situation at a primary or secondary. and here's another view of RID operators cruising the effort. So you can, again, you can see the, but it's pretty tough, you know. How many people feel like if you were sitting up, this is the one piece that I was aware of slightly as a, before I started reading about the RID, and this idea of high frequency direction finding stations with these double dipoles that are fed in opposite polarity so that they direction finding stations. And you'll notice again the SX28, and in the back there's a sideband slicer of the triangulation that they're doing. And this was a true case. This is when they actually had somebody transmitting after the war started inside the German embassy. And apparently we'd said you can't transmit. But anyway, they did. But read down the bottom what it says. It says the first alert was sent by an aperiodic receiver in a mobile unit, zeroing in on the actual building. Okay. So it just says that the location was narrowed down to the German embassy, but the transmitter was not seized due to FBI concerns. Was the equipment provider of choice for the RID. At that point, they scuttled the ship. But the Americans took, okay, and it shows you the setup here. Pretty nice. It would probably get pretty old running around with this thing, but hey, you know, getting paid. Better than being in service, I guess. Sniffer. But the name came from a fellow they had that was a liaison, a British liaison. He was actually an astrophysicist. So he decided that this should be called a sniff turret. And so transcribing that tape, if, you know, so. Also a reference in one of the mobile cars where they pulled up outside of a ham's house right before Pearl Harbor. So he shouldn't have been transmitting, but he was. And they were watching his signal on what they called, so they had a nickname for this. Here's a better picture of Dr. Wallace. He had a doctorate in chemistry, by the way. So, but there's his SX28 and the one of the early at once. Okay, it's pretty difficult, pretty big task by the receiver. And what it does, it gives you an indication that somebody's documentation. I'll let you. Here. Okay, it says basically most manufacturers are looking at defense contracts. So this is 3309 Layton Avenue, 3-bedroom, 1 bath, 1,100 square feet, full basement. Okay, his car was really W3ZK, and I held in New Bern, North Carolina. Okay, by Al Parker, who lives in, and it came from a fellow who collected eclectic things. So just kind of weird things. He wasn't really a ham. He just had all these oddball things, and Al's had it for about 20 years. So I was looking through all the RID information, and I found a record. They investigated something over 9,000 signals during the war. They shut down 400 unlicensed transmission about your successes until afterwards. But there was actually a short on 7150 that we're going to move around in frequent lights. What do I need to do?
Oh, I saw this on TV.
That is good. And this is even crazier.
Did you get a good picture of that?
No, I haven't got anything.
That is totally amazing.
I need a copy if he does give me a copy. Fun Manufacturing Company.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That's what you said, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't lie. It's just, this takes it another step. So. Oh, I know.
In the same state.
It's crazy. This one came out.
Have you heard about the successor to this one, the national radio?
No, an RBJ.
I didn't get Charlotte back. Oh, yeah. Oh, watch that. Hey, I caught that. I want you to hold that. Yeah, hold that. I want to get a shot of you.
So you got serial number 3 and serial number 7.
And this one's gonna end up in a different place.
Start on website.